I exposed her performance, uncovered trust cloaking with digital proof, filed legal warfare, reclaimed property, accounts, and rebuilt my freedom. "Here's to new beginnings," Denise said, lifting her wine glass with that same tight, rehearsed smile she wore when she lied to the neighbors about why I hadn't been at the last block party. Her voice echoed in the too-quiet dining room. She tapped her fork against her glass. Ting, ting, ting. Everyone turned to her. Everyone but me. I already knew. It wasn't the way her hand trembled or how she avoided my eyes. It was the second wine glass to her right, already half empty, lipstick smudged on the rim, and I don't wear lipstick. "Harold and I have decided to go our separate ways," she began, clearing her throat theatrically. "Actually, I decided," she added after a dramatic pause, as if this were dinner theater and I was the intermission. "We took a vote," she continued, scanning the faces around the table. "And you're out." I looked up slowly. Her brothers, Glenn and Mitch, both gave those awkward half-shrugs, as if they were sorry, but not sorry enough to stand up. Her sister-in-law sipped her wine like it was her job, but it was our daughter Karen that hit hardest. She looked away, didn't blink, didn't speak, didn't cry, just looked away. That was the first cut. Not the deepest, but the first. I didn't ask why. I didn't plead. I didn't lean over the table, demand answers, or throw the roast chicken to the floor like some broken sitcom husband. I simply folded my napkin, stood up, and said, "Thank you for dinner." Denise blinked. That part hadn't been rehearsed. "No response?" she asked, eyebrows raised. "You're just going to walk away?" I reached for my coat. "You already decided, remember? Voted and all?" Her mouth opened, probably to say something smug, but I didn't give her the space. I left. The cold air hit harder than I expected. December wind sliced through my shirt sleeves like glass. I sat in my truck for 10 minutes without starting the engine, just watching the condensation from my breath fade against the windshield, thinking, calculating. See, when you spend 27 years in silence, when you're the one who fixes plumbing at midnight, who files taxes early, who double-checks the insurance policies, you start noticing patterns, movements, the way a name disappears from a joint account before anyone says a word, the way your daughter suddenly starts calling your wife Denise instead of Mom. I had noticed. The vote was just the announcement. The decision had been made long ago. I drove to the cabin. Not the one Denise's family always claimed was ours. No, I mean mine. The one deeded before the marriage, tucked away in the Berkshires, cold as hell, but with a working fireplace and a safe under the floorboards. Inside that safe were 3 folders: personal, property, and backup. I took out property first and started crossing out my own name, not out of grief but out of strategy. "You want me out, Denise? Fine. But let's see what that really means." Denise strutted through the community center like she was auditioning for a reality show no one asked to watch. Loud laughs, over-explained gestures. "Harold's taking it so well," she said to Susan from yoga, as if I were a golden retriever who just rolled over on command. Really mature about the whole thing. I think deep down he knew it was time. Time. That's the one thing she never saw ticking. While she was sipping sangria and fielding supportive DMs from high school exes, I was at the courthouse filing paperwork with the calm of a man double-checking a grocery list. The clerk looked surprised when I said I wanted to revoke my name from the joint marital trust. "Most men fight tooth and nail," she said. "Most men don't have a 20-year folder," I replied. Because that's the thing. While Denise played queen of the divorce parade, I was 10 steps into an endgame she didn't even know existed. First, the accounts. We had 3: personal checking, emergency savings, and a joint goals fund she once swore was for our Tuscany anniversary. That one had become a slush fund for her wellness retreats and overpriced wine. I left exactly $147 in each and moved the rest into accounts under Reynolds Consulting Holdings, LLC, newly formed, legally separate, filed through a law firm in Vermont where LLC registries don't require public officer names. Next came the house, but not the obvious one she thought was theirs. I'd long ago added a deed rider to the family cabin, classifying it under premarital assets held in a solo trust. She never noticed, never cared. It was just the woods until I updated the trust to restrict access to any party not named in the original deed. That would come in handy soon enough. Then the business. Reynolds IT Solutions. She always thought it was ours because she took the photos for the website and answered the phone when I was sick. Sweet. I signed it over to an umbrella LLC that, legally speaking, now belonged to the Harold Reynolds Family Survivorship Trust. Funny how people only pay attention when you add your name to something. No one ever notices the quiet disappearance of one. I changed my mailing address to a private P.O. box. Installed encrypted cloud backups of every financial document from the past decade. I even updated the metadata on Denise's favorite family photos. Don't ask why, just know it'll matter later. The only time I paused was when I saw a note tucked into an old file marked Karen, college. It was a receipt for the last tuition payment I made in full. She never knew I used my private inheritance, not our joint savings, to make it happen. I folded it and slid it into a new folder labeled to be found. By the end of the week, Denise's version of mature Harold had become the story she told over wine tastings and brunches. He's so dignified, she gushed. No drama at all. Dignified? No, I was just busy. Because some men yell when betrayed. Others build traps so quiet no one hears the floor drop until it's too late. It was a Thursday afternoon when Denise decided the house needed a fresh start. That's what she called it in her Facebook post anyway. New chapter ahead. House going on the market. Open to offers. House with garden views. Hashtag fresh start. Hashtag unbothered. The post got 74 likes. Mostly from divorcees and wannabe influencers who'd never met Harold but loved the idea of a woman reclaiming her life. What Denise didn't post was the part where she vacuumed in heels an hour before the agent arrived and hid the liquor bottles behind the antique china. Appearances still mattered. The realtor, a polished 30-something named Kendra, was all smiles and notes. Oh wow, original crown molding. This is going to fly off the market. Denise beamed. It's all in great shape. We did the kitchen last fall. We. That word still burned on her tongue, but she used it out of habit. They did a full walkthrough. Kendra scribbled excitedly into her iPad. 3 bedrooms, that sunroom, 2-car garage. Honestly, with the market right now, we could get above asking. Have you spoken to your attorney yet? She asked. He'll need to prep the ownership documents. Denise smiled and waved her hand. It's all clean. The house is in my name and Harold's, but he's, let's just say, not the confrontational type. She meant it as an insult. Kendra heard it as reassurance. The next day, Denise arrived at her lawyer's office wearing that burnt orange blazer she saved for what she called power moves. She sat across from Alan, her attorney of 5 years, who had the patience of a tax auditor and the charisma of a filing cabinet. He opened the file, squinted, then frowned. Huh. Denise's heels clicked impatiently beneath the desk. What? There's something here you need to see. She leaned forward, lips already curled in irritation. Alan turned the page. According to this updated filing dated 8 months ago, there's a rider on the deed, a restrictive clause filed through a third-party notary, signed and notarized by Harold. Denise blinked. What clause? Alan adjusted his glasses. It says, and I quote, property is non-transferable or subject to sale pending dissolution of marriage unless executed with mutual consent as per marital survivorship clause C. She squinted. What the hell does that mean? It means, he said slowly, you can't sell the house without Harold's approval. And that clause supersedes default community property laws in this state. Denise laughed, actually laughed. That can't be right. I never signed anything like that. You didn't need to, Alan replied. The original deed was filed solely under Harold's name before the marriage. Later he added your name via survivorship, not co-ownership. Then last year he reverted it via an addendum while maintaining survivorship status, which is legal apparently. She stopped laughing. Are you telling me he planned this? I'm saying he filed this 8 months ago, and you signed nothing to prevent it. The blood drained from her face in slow pulsing waves. Alan flipped to the signature page, neat, precise, Harold's handwriting, dated right around the time they were renewing their vows in Maui. The same week she'd been texting Glenn from accounting under the name Beth. Denise sat very still, then stood too fast. I need to speak to him, she snapped. Alan closed the file. I doubt he's picking up. He was right, I wasn't. At that exact moment, I was on the back deck of my condo, watching a red-tailed hawk circle above the trees. I sipped coffee, checked the time, then smiled. She'd found the first breadcrumb. Only 9 more to go. Denise arrived at the attorney's office like she was walking into a closing ceremony, not a legal consultation. She wore her gold cuff bracelet, the one she only dusted off when she wanted to signal everything was under control. Her nails were done in some shade called Victory Red, and her smile had the tight pull of a woman convinced the win was already hers. "Let's get this wrapped," she chirped, tossing her designer tote onto the chair. "I have a showing lined up Saturday, and 2 couples already messaging me through Zillow." The paralegal, a young woman named Britt with tortoiseshell glasses and the posture of someone trying not to flinch, shifted awkwardly. "We've been reviewing the property paperwork and, well, Mr. Carson wanted me to wait until everyone was present." Everyone. Denise glanced at Alan, who offered a dry, nervous smile and motioned toward the closed door. It opened. A man in a charcoal suit stepped in. Not Harold. Some other attorney, mid-50s, calm eyes, briefcase that had clearly seen more war than fashion. "Miss Reynolds," he said, extending a hand. "I'm Walter Emery. I represent Mr. Harold Reynolds." Denise's face twitched. "He's lawyering up now?" "Really?" Emery didn't blink. He already did, months ago. She snorted. "All right, what is this? You're going to contest the sale?" Walter nodded slowly, then motioned for Britt. The paralegal opened a thin red folder, removed a certified copy of the deed, and cleared her throat. On March 14th, she began. A revised property agreement was filed by Mr. Reynolds, authenticated through the state registry. The clause in question is under Section D, Paragraph 7. She glanced up. Alan was already flipping through his copy, brow furrowed. Then Britt read aloud, voice flat but final. "This property is not legally transferable." Denise blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" Britt repeated it. "This property is not legally transferable. That's the clause." No, that makes no sense," Denise said, shaking her head with a dry laugh. "It's our marital home. I can sell it. I have power of—" Walter interjected gently. "You had assumed power of sale until the deed was amended. The original owner, Mr. Reynolds, never relinquished full title. The survivorship clause you relied on was invalidated by the new filing, without needing your consent. He didn't need it. You weren't a co-owner. You were a survivorship addendum on a trust-controlled asset." Alan looked like someone had hit him with a pillow full of bricks. Denise's jaw clenched. "This is some legal loophole. This won't hold in court." "It already did," Walter replied, sliding another document forward. "It's been reviewed and upheld. You were notified through registered mail per process to the residence in your name." She stared at him. Then her mouth fell open. That week, March, she'd been in Cabo with her sisters, bragging about freedom and flirtations and how Harold had finally learned to shut up. The certified letter had arrived, sat unopened on the foyer table for weeks. She had tossed it, assuming it was junk, maybe even bragged about that too. "Wait," she said, breath shallow. "This isn't enforceable." Alan didn't respond. She turned to him, whispering now.
"Alan?"
He rubbed his temple. "It's binding." The air left the room like someone had pulled the oxygen out through a straw. Britt quietly excused herself. Walter simply closed the folder. And Denise, who had walked in already planning what tile to install after the sale, now sat frozen, because 6 words, buried deep, perfectly timed and signed beneath her nose, had just turned her golden parachute into a cinder block. This property is not legally transferable. And this time there were no likes, no hashtags, no backup plan, just Harold and his silence. Denise didn't walk into the lawyer's office this time. She stormed in like a thundercloud wearing heels. The receptionist barely had time to say good afternoon before Denise slapped her sunglasses onto the counter and snapped, "Where's Jeremy?" Jeremy, the family lawyer who had handled everything from her mother's will to her sister's prenup disaster, was supposed to be her safety net. The man who once told her over brunch, "Don't worry, Denise. Paper always beats drama." Well, the paper was bleeding now. Jeremy came out of his office with a nervous half-smile and the look of a man who just realized the bomb under his desk was ticking. "Denise, save it," she said, pushing past him. "I want answers now." They sat. "Explain to me," she hissed, tossing down the file from yesterday's meeting, "how my husband, my soon-to-be ex-husband, managed to lock me out of selling my own damn house." Jeremy's mouth opened, closed, then opened again like a goldfish on its 3rd panic attack. "Denise, I wasn't involved in that filing. That deed update, it wasn't through us." She froze. "What do you mean it wasn't through us? You've handled our estate for 15 years. I assumed he'd use me," Jeremy admitted. But apparently he retained separate counsel. Her voice dropped low and sharp. "Who?" He sighed. A firm based out of Maine, Emery and Castell, small but surgical. They specialize in preemptive asset restructuring. She blinked. You're telling me he brought in some off-grid legal assassins from Maine? I wouldn't put it quite that way. How the hell did he even know about them? Jeremy hesitated. They're former federal tax litigators. Extremely discreet. Mostly do generational wealth transfers and, well, trust cloaking. Trust cloaking? What the hell does that even mean? He rubbed the back of his neck. It means there's likely a blind trust involved. And if there is, no one, not you, not me, not even a judge without cause, can see the terms unless Harold authorizes it. Her voice hitched. You're saying he controls it? Technically the trustee does, but yes, he holds the keys. Denise stood so fast her chair nearly tipped. Unacceptable. She pulled out her phone, called her divorce attorney Melissa Ford, the woman with 4 degrees and a courtroom kill streak. After a brief, snappy exchange, Melissa agreed to conference in Jeremy. 2 minutes later, all 3 were on speaker. Denise paced the office like a caged lioness. Melissa's voice came through sharp and clipped. Jeremy, can you confirm the trust Harold set up is legally valid and inaccessible? Jeremy exhaled. Yes, and more than that, it was registered interstate. This firm insulated it through out-of-state jurisdiction, which means even if we contest, we'd have to do it there. That would take time, resources, and a judge inclined to override trust law precedent. Melissa was silent. Then, son of a... Denise stopped pacing. What? You're not just locked out of the house, Denise, Melissa said slowly. You're locked out of everything. The accounts, the pension, the business. You said you two shared the LLC. We did, she snapped. Correction, Melissa said. You thought you did. If he rolled those into the trust, he likely dissolved your name and restructured without telling you. Perfectly legal if the bylaws allow it, and if you weren't a managing member. Denise's knees hit the edge of Jeremy's desk. She sank into the chair. Melissa, she whispered. Can you fix this? There was a pause, a silence so brutal it felt like an answer. Then, I'll try. Click. The call ended. Denise stared straight ahead. Jeremy looked down, pretending to read something. In that moment it hit her. This wasn't a war she was waging. It was a game she'd already lost months ago. While she'd been throwing shade on social media and feeding her friends stories of Harold's midlife shutdown, he'd been sculpting a silent empire, not out of rage, but out of precision, out of knowing. And now she was on the outside, looking in at everything she once mocked, everything she once thought she owned. And the doors weren't just locked, they were gone. She knocked quietly, 3 soft taps, no doorbell, like she wasn't sure she had the right to be there. When I opened the door, Karen stood in the hallway with her arms wrapped around herself, wearing that oversized hoodie from her grad school days and no makeup. Not her usual performance-ready look. Her eyes were red. She wasn't crying, not yet, but she looked like someone who had run out of justifications. I didn't know where else to go, she murmured. I stepped aside. You found it anyway. She walked in, scanning the condo. Sparse, clean, almost too orderly. No pictures on the walls yet. Just a few books, a kettle, and a massive ceramic bowl she had made for me back in 7th grade. She noticed it immediately. Her fingers traced the warped edge. One corner still chipped. You kept this? She asked, more to herself than to me. I didn't answer, just motioned toward the couch. She sat silent for a minute, then another. Finally, why didn't you fight back? I poured 2 mugs of tea and sat across from her. You mean, why didn't I shout in a restaurant while people clinked glasses and pretended betrayal was a toast? Her lips pressed tight. I could have made noise, I continued. Sure. But that only feeds their story. Instead, I left them the stage and rewrote the script. Karen stared into her mug like it might give her better answers. It just felt like you disappeared. I didn't say anything. Let the silence sit a bit longer. After a while I stood, walked to my desk, pulled out a thin black folder, and placed it gently on the coffee table. I wasn't planning to show this yet, I said, but I figure it's time. She hesitated, then opened it. Inside, a copy of the educational trust agreement from when she was 12. My signature, original terms, funding details, a ledger of every contribution made, every tuition bill paid. Line by line, there were notes in the margins. Questions I'd asked financial advisors about locking in lower interest rates, maximizing her Roth IRA, whether she'd get penalized if she took a semester off. At the bottom, an annotation dated 2 years ago: "Do not allow this fund to be touched under any marital condition. Irrevocable for Karen, always." Her hand covered her mouth. She flipped the page. Savings bonds. An insurance policy with her listed as sole beneficiary. A letter addressed to her, still sealed. She looked up. "You knew this was coming." I didn't answer. She swallowed hard. "Mom always said you just gave up, that you were tired, small." I leaned back, sipping my tea. That's what people say when they mistake silence for surrender. Karen didn't speak for a long time. Her eyes moved over the documents again, slowly, carefully, like she was relearning a language she used to speak fluently before Denise taught her a new one. Then she asked, so softly I barely caught it, "Was this always the plan?" I gave her a small shrug. "Let's just say I planned for all the outcomes, even the ones I hoped wouldn't happen." She closed the folder, held it like it was fragile. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I know," I said. She left it on the table when she stood to go, but turned at the door. "She's scared," Karen said. "She won't admit it, but she's unraveling." I didn't flinch. Truth has a way of doing that. Karen paused. "I don't know where I stand anymore." "You don't have to decide right now," I said, walking her to the door. "But take this." I handed her the letter. She looked down at it, like it burned. When the door shut behind her, I leaned my head against it for a second. Outside, I heard her footsteps pause, then slowly fade. One visit doesn't undo betrayal, but it cracks the armor. And Karen was already starting to hear the sound it makes when the lies no longer echo. They met at Glenn's place, neutral ground. His wife was conveniently at Pilates, which everyone knew meant she didn't want to be dragged into another one of Denise's damage control campaigns. The blinds were drawn, the wine was open. Denise had called it a strategy session, like they were generals planning a counteroffensive, not siblings cleaning up the wreckage of her crumbling life. "So here's the situation," Denise began. Swirling her glass like oxygen would make the facts go down easier. "Harold's boxed me out. The house, the accounts, even the damn cabin. I need both of you to help me contest the trust. We can prove he manipulated the filings." He was sneaky, calculated, vindictive. Mitch leaned forward, arms crossed. Glenn stayed quiet, eyes flicking between them. Denise continued. "If we show it was done in bad faith behind my back, we can get it reopened. I just need family support. You two can sign statements. Back me up. Say he always treated me coldly, withheld things, that he wasn't honest." Mitch tilted his head. "You want us to lie?" "No," Denise said too quickly. "I want you to support me. You've seen how he was. Always quiet, controlling. We need to paint the picture." Glenn finally raised a hand. "Denise." She stopped, mid-sentence. "I talked to him." Silence. "You what?" "Last week. He called me. Said he knew all this would come crashing soon. Said he didn't want to drag anyone through it, but he left some documents in my Dropbox. Asked me to look through them before I picked a side." Her eyes narrowed. "And you did?" Glenn nodded. "I did." Denise's smile tightened. "So now he's manipulating you too." Glenn looked at her like she'd just insulted his IQ. "He sent me the original home purchase records from before the wedding, the closing costs, his solo loan. You said you both paid for that house." "We did. I helped decorate it. I paid for the new kitchen." "Denise," Mitch cut in, "you told us he was broke when you met, that you pulled him up." She scoffed. "He was emotionally, spiritually, but not financially." Glenn said flatly, "You never told us about the prenup either." Denise's heart rate kicked like a drumline. "What prenup?" "The one he had you sign 6 days before the wedding. I saw it. Your signature's there. I was pressured. It was last minute. I didn't understand." "Denise," Mitch said quietly, "you were bragging about how you were marrying up back then, that he had real money and wouldn't be like your exes." She set her wineglass down too hard. The clink echoed. "You're supposed to have my back," she hissed. "Not his." "We've had your back for years," Glenn said, tone harder now. "When you said he was cold, we believed you. When you said he hid things, we assumed he was gaslighting. But you never once mentioned the financial stuff, not the house, not the prenup, not the business. You painted him as this doormat. Turns out he was just quiet." Mitch looked uneasy. "I always thought it was weird how you'd talk over him at every dinner, like he was a placeholder." Denise stood. "You think I'm the villain now?" Glenn didn't stand, just looked up at her calmly. "No. I think the story is more complicated than you let on. And I think, Mitch added, you're on your own with this one. It landed like a slap. The room shrank. Denise scanned their faces, looking for a crack, a waver, something she could push. There was none. Just two brothers who finally realized they'd been playing background characters in a narrative she'd been scripting alone. She grabbed her purse. Thanks for nothing, she snapped, marching toward the door. Just before she left, Glenn called after her. You might want to call Karen. Denise paused. What? She came by my office yesterday, asked me about trust laws, said she's been thinking about some things. Denise's breath caught. And? He shrugged. Didn't say, but she didn't sound like she was on your side. Denise left. This time the door didn't slam. It clicked, soft, final. And for the first time in this unraveling saga, she walked away without applause, without backup, just her own footsteps echoing down the hall of a story she no longer controlled. The moment Denise's car screeched into the Wellsford Bank parking lot, she looked like someone trying to beat the clock on a sinking ship. She double-parked, barely grabbed her purse, and power-walked through the glass doors like she expected someone to snatch the last slice of pie off her plate. The account was one of the few remaining scraps she thought she could still claim. A small investment fund Harold had opened back in 2006. It had been meant for legacy gifts, whatever that meant. She'd forgotten about it until Melissa mentioned there might still be residuals in the system. Estimated value, just under $94,000, not life-changing, but enough to feel like a victory, enough to win something. I need to close an account, she said breathlessly to the woman at the counter, already fishing out her ID. It's under Reynolds, joint ownership, but I'm here in person. Should be fine. The teller, polite but stiff, took the ID and clicked away at the keyboard, then paused. More clicks, a frown, a glance at another monitor. Denise's eyes narrowed. Is something wrong? The teller cleared her throat. I'm going to bring in a manager. Just one moment, please. That sentence alone felt like a slap. 2 minutes later, a branch manager appeared, early 40s, overly calm, clipboard in hand. Ms. Reynolds, I'm Michelle. Mind stepping into the conference room for a moment? In the room, with the blinds partially closed and the air too cold, Michelle sat opposite Denise with the gentleness of someone about to give bad news at a funeral. So, Michelle began. We see you're attempting to withdraw from account number 1792. Yes, it's in my name. Michelle gave a practiced smile. It was, technically under both your names, until the account underwent scheduled reallocation 2 weeks ago. Denise blinked. Scheduled what? Michelle tapped the clipboard. The account was subject to a timed release clause, executed via standing instruction, fully authorized. Authorized by who? Mr. Harold Reynolds. It was arranged nearly 18 months ago, actually. Michelle turned the clipboard around and slid it across the table. Denise scanned the document. There it was, plain as day, final distribution to be executed automatically upon initiation of divorce proceedings or upon marital asset dispute, whichever occurs first. Beneficiary, the Evelyn Carter Foundation for Girls in STEM. Denise's throat closed.
The what foundation?
Michelle didn't flinch. The Evelyn Carter Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit established by Mr. Reynolds in honor of your late mother. The words hit like a punch to the lungs. You're telling me he funneled our money into a charity named after my mother? Michelle nodded. Yes, the transfer cleared last Monday. Denise tried to steady her voice. I want to contest it. That money was partly mine. Michelle gave the kind of apologetic shrug banks hand out when they've already locked the vault. Unfortunately, charitable transfers executed under irrevocable clauses are protected. You'd have to sue the foundation directly. Denise froze. And then came the real horror, what that would mean. To claw that money back, she'd need to file suit against the Evelyn Carter Foundation, her mother, the woman she had eulogized as a pillar of compassion and progress. She'd have to publicly claim her ex-husband's tribute to her mother was fraudulent, that her mother's name had no right to support underprivileged girls in tech. The PR alone would be a bloodbath. Reporters would dig. The narrative would twist. Ex-wife sues charity named for her own mother after losing a state battle. Social media would eat her alive. Is there any other recourse? She asked, voice smaller than she meant it to be. Michelle shook her head. I'm afraid not. Denise stood suddenly, unsure how legs even worked. She stumbled back into the parking lot. A notification buzzed on her phone. Karen had posted a photo, a scholarship award letter framed. Caption, Thank you to the Evelyn Carter Foundation. Some legacies are bigger than the people who try to control them. The comment section was already filling up. Denise's hands trembled as she scrolled. And in that moment, standing in a parking lot, betrayed not just by a man but by optics, she realized something brutal. She wasn't just losing battles, she was suing ghosts. And ghosts don't lose. The restaurant was all white linen and overpriced mimosas. The kind of place where brunch was less about food and more about being seen. Denise had picked it herself. Of course it was Marlene's birthday. But Denise was already rehearsing lines in the mirror that morning like she was the guest of honor. She wore her best cream blazer, just tight enough to remind people she still had it, and a pearl pin from her mother's old jewelry box. The irony lost on her completely. The women at the table were the usual suspects. Middle-aged power brunchers with expensive skincare routines and even more expensive gossip. Laughter bounced off the marble walls. Glasses clinked. Stories flowed about trips to Aspen, weekend yoga retreats, some new real estate flip that barely broke even, but sounded great on Instagram. Then it happened. Right after the second round of drinks, a woman from across the table, Stacy, the one with the too loud laugh and a minor podcast no one listened to, leaned in just a little too casually and said, "Hey Denise, crazy question. Is it true what they're saying about you suing that STEM foundation?" The table went still, just enough for the temperature to drop. Denise blinked. "Excuse me?" Stacy shrugged. "Someone brought it up in the group chat. I didn't even know Harold started a nonprofit. That's wild." Denise forced a short laugh. "Oh please, that's not even accurate. It's a technical issue, not a lawsuit. Just a misunderstanding with how he restructured our financials." But her voice wobbled. A younger woman at the end of the table, no more than 30, probably someone's niece, raised her phone and tilted it toward the group. "No, it's real. Look," and there it was. The headline glared like a wound. Ex-wife of tech consultant files suit against charity named for her late mother after asset dispute. Subheading: Harold Reynolds' ex-wife Denise Carter Reynolds initiates legal action against the Evelyn Carter Foundation, sparking public backlash over perceived attempt to reclaim marital assets through non-profit channels. The table fell, dead silent. Even the waiters mid-pour slowed. Denise's face turned porcelain white. "I didn't sue a charity," she hissed. "It's not that simple. He used the foundation to what?" someone asked. "Honor your mother?" "No. He weaponized her name. To humiliate me." But the words sounded hollow, even to her. Stacy tapped the screen. "It says here you tried to freeze the account, that you wanted the funds recalled." "It's my money," Denise snapped, too loud. Someone cleared their throat. Denise looked around. Marlene wouldn't meet her eyes. A woman she'd known since PTA days began fiddling with her napkin. Even the niece, bold and blunt as she was, had the good sense to look away. No one said anything for a moment too long. Then Marlene, gentle but brutal, asked, "Denise, was that foundation really named after your mom?" Denise swallowed hard. "Yes, then maybe don't sue it." The words dropped like a brick in a koi pond. Denise felt it, her grip on the table, her breath caught mid-throat, her pulse crawling into her ears. The power she once held in rooms like these, through charisma, control, sheer volume, was gone. It had evaporated, leaked out slowly over the past months like gas from a cracked tank. And now she wasn't the center of attention. She was the cautionary tale. One woman stood to take a phone call. Two others suddenly remembered early appointments. The server slid the check toward Marlene, not Denise, for the first time in years. Denise didn't finish her drink, didn't say goodbye. She walked out of the restaurant like a woman whose heels weren't high enough to carry the weight anymore. Her reputation, what she'd clung to when the money started slipping, was officially, publicly, humiliatingly shattered. And she still had one more court date left, the final one. The one where Harold had saved the most devastating clause for last. Courtroom 3B wasn't packed, but it felt suffocating, the kind of room that makes every breath taste like paper and old polish. Denise sat at the front table, hands folded so tightly her knuckles had gone pale. The same pearl pin she wore to brunch was now stabbed into her blazer like a relic from a war she was still pretending she hadn't already lost. Melissa, her attorney, sat beside her, silent, grim, beaten before the gavel even dropped. Harold sat across the aisle. He wasn't smug, wasn't angry, wasn't even curious. He looked like a man waiting for the DMV to call his number. Calm, neutral, a man who had already buried the emotions. Everyone else was still dragging behind them like chains. The judge shuffled papers. No introductions, no drama. Just the slow, inevitable crawl toward the final nail in the coffin. Before we proceed with closing arguments, the judge began, flipping to the final page of Harold's trust documentation. There is a provision here the court must acknowledge, a clause filed under Section 9, Paragraph 3. He paused, then read aloud, deliberate, steady, without fanfare. In the event of marital separation, all disputed assets default to the premarital holder. The words slid through the room like a scalpel. Then came the silence. Not even the click of a pen, not even a cough. The judge looked up, adjusted his glasses, and added the sentence Denise would hear every time she closed her eyes for the rest of her life. This house, and all related properties, legally belong to Mr. Reynolds. Denise blinked once, twice. Her lips parted, but no sound came. She turned to Melissa, whose face had the same frozen expression of a surgeon realizing the patient on the table was already dead. But I contributed, Denise whispered. We renovated together. The judge didn't respond. He didn't need to. Because it wasn't about memories or effort or decorative throw pillows. It was about paper. Signed, filed, buried, waiting. Harold stood, buttoned his jacket with the same slow, respectful motion you'd use at a funeral. Denise looked at him for the first time since the ruling. Really looked at him. He didn't gloat, didn't smirk, didn't even meet her eyes. He simply nodded once, then turned and walked out. No last words, no dramatic monologue, no closing speech to drive the knife deeper. He didn't need to raise his voice, because every piece of this collapse had spoken for him in legal filings, in strategic silences, in quiet plans that didn't scream. They waited. Denise remained seated, still, like if she stayed long enough, maybe someone would rewind the tape and let her try again. But no one did. The judge banged the gavel. The clerk called the next case. And the woman who once ran rooms with her presence now sat utterly alone in a courtroom that had already moved on. Because revenge doesn't always come with shouting. Sometimes it arrives wearing silence and a suit that fits perfectly.